Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 1190 of the Juicebox Podcast. On this episode of Ask Scott and Jenny, instead of the listeners asking the questions, which we'll get back to in the next episode, I ask Jenny a question and she asks me a few. Please don't forget that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. There's an incredibly simple way for you to lend your knowledge to diabetes research without leaving your home. That's right, if you've ever wanted to help type 1 diabetes research but didn't have the time or couldn't make the commitment, now you can. T1Dexchange.org/juicebox. Head over there and take the survey. The survey takes about 10 minutes. They won't ask you one question you don't know the answer to, and you should be in and out of there in like 10 minutes. You need to be a U.S. resident who has type 1 diabetes or is the caregiver of someone with type 1. Go lend your knowledge to the research that helps so many, maybe even you. And while you're online, go check out the Juicebox Podcast private Facebook group where you'll meet 50,000 members. Juicebox Podcast, type 1 diabetes. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by AG1. Drink AG1.com/juicebox. Head there now to learn more about AG1. It's vegan-friendly, gluten-free, dairy-free, non-GMO, no sugar added, no artificial sweeteners. And when you make your first order with my link, you're going to get AG1 and a welcome kit that includes a shaker, scoop, and canister. You're also going to get 5 free travel packs and a year's supply of vitamin D with that first order at drinkag1.com/juicebox. US Med is sponsoring this episode of the Juicebox Podcast, and we've been getting our diabetes supplies from US Med for years. You can as well. usmed.com/juicebox or call 888-721-1514. Use the link or the number, get your free benefits check, and get started today with US Med. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by Eversense. The Eversense CGM is more convenient, requiring only one sensor every 6 months. It offers more flexibility with its easy on, easy off smart transmitter and allows you to take a break when needed. EversenseCGM.com/juicebox. All right, Jenny, welcome back. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Excellent. Thank you. I had an idea this morning.
Yay.
In the shower, and I texted you, and I knew we were going to record.
While in the shower?
No, I mean, I want to say respectfully, I waited till I was dressed.
Yay.
Yeah, because I do think that would be weird, even if you wouldn't know that I was naked when I texted you.
I was thinking about the water on your phone while you're trying to do things in the shower.
Wait, you don't do this? Like, Arden calls us from school from the shower. She FaceTimes from the shower. All of her friends, they FaceTime while they're showering all the time. The girls do. Yeah.
That's bizarre.
They put it up high enough that you can just kind of see their shoulders and their head, and they shower and talk to each other. I think it's the only time they have time to talk to each other, actually, because they're all in college, maybe. I don't know. But anyway.
That's anyway.
I just want you to know I was fully dressed before I texted
Fabulous.
you. Yeah. And
you had an idea.
Yeah. Also, I want to say this. My mom has passed on now, but my mom had an incredible way of calling me or texting me as I was getting into the shower for years. And she passed away, and I thought, well, at least that won't happen anymore. Except for Isabel from the Facebook group. She picked right up where my mom left off.
That's funny.
It doesn't matter if it's like right away in the morning and I'm like, I'm up out of bed and I jump in the shower. If I get up and I mess with the dogs and 2 hours later I get, doesn't matter. I find myself reaching for that faucet, or I just got in and Isabel's like, hey, can you look at a post on the Facebook group? Or did you mean for this to happen in the episode today? I'm like, how do you know I'm in the shower?
Right.
Like, you look around for
You're
cameras.
interrupting my me time.
This is the one moment I get. And the hot water hits me and I have a good idea, like the one I had today for us. So
Awesome.
We've been doing some Ask Scott and Jenny stuff lately, which we'll get back to the next time you and I talk. But today, I want to ask each other a question and just see where the conversation goes. Okay. So I texted Jenny and I said, come up with a couple of questions for me. And then I came up with one question for you.
Only one?
Well, I feel like there's a conversation in it, so I don't want to eat up too much
Oh,
time. And I wanted you to have
okay.
like something to pick from. That's why I was like, here, you get more.
Oh,
And I've tried very hard not to consider your answer or what you might ask me today, because I just want it to be kind of free flowing. So anyway, that's the amount of effort that goes into the podcast that you guys love. Can I ask my question first?
sure.
Do you want to go first? Do you have like,
No,
all right.
no.
all right.
Go ahead. You said, let's think of 5 questions. I thought of 6.
You have 6 questions? All right.
6.
All right. Well, I'm going to ask my
No,
question.
you go first.
Well, okay.
Perfect.
So you have to listen to the podcast pretty specifically, I think, to know this. But the moment that I began to think about getting better at diabetes started with me asking Arden's nurse practitioner, CDE maybe? Which one did I ask? Maybe the CDE.
She could have been both. Or he. I mean,
It was a she, and maybe she is both. I don't know. That's neither here nor there.
okay.
Anyway, she's definitely a CDE. And I said, if I gave you a magic wand, what would you make people with diabetes do? One thing. You can only make them do one thing. And she said, without much thought, I'd tell them not to be afraid of insulin.
Mm-hmm.
And that went on a whole thing. I wrote a 6-part blog series for back then. It was Omnipod's blog about not being afraid of insulin. But the truth was, I was afraid of insulin. So it wasn't like a blog from like a learned person who was like, here's some tips about how not to be. It was me talking myself out of being afraid.
Oh.
And I think it helped Arden immeasurably. And I think it spawned a lot of what people hear now on the podcast. So my question to you is, if I gave you a magic wand and you could make everybody with diabetes do one thing, what would you make them do? This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by Eversense. And Eversense is the implantable CGM that lasts 6 months. EversenseCGM.com/juicebox. Have you ever been running out the door and knocked your CGM off? Or had somewhere to be and realized that your adhesive was about to fall off? That won't happen with Eversense. Eversense won't get sweaty and slide off. It won't bang into a door jamb. And it lasts 6 months, not just a couple days or a week. The Eversense CGM has a silicone-based adhesive for its transmitter, which you change every day. So it's not one of those super sticky things that's designed to stay on you forever and ever, even though we know they don't work sometimes. But that's not the point. Because it's not that kind of adhesive, you shouldn't see any skin irritations. So if you've had skin irritations with other products, maybe you should try Eversense. Unique, implantable, and accurate. So if you're tired of dealing with things falling off or being too sticky or not sticky enough or not staying on for the life of the sensor, you probably want to check out Eversense. EversenseCGM.com/juicebox. Links in the show notes. Links at juiceboxpodcast.com.
That's a great question. What would I make them do? I mean, I would have referred to insulin had you not already brought it up.
Mm-hmm.
But being a dietitian and not a nurse,
Okay.
I would, and I don't want this to sound judgy,
Ooh.
but I would really, right? Like,
I love
there's
this. Go
no
ahead.
judgment. In fact, I say to people all the time when I'm like, this is like the no judgment zone. I'm here, to help, to cover, to whatever we're going to discuss. But I would really love for people to truly understand what the impact of food outside of blood sugar does to their overall health.
Okay.
Because, with diabetes, we're really focused on blood sugar numbers, right? And food is a big part of that. There's kind of 3 tiers: exercise, food, and insulin, and food being a major piece of that. I think we focus too heavily on not being afraid of the insulin, but because of that, we sort of lose the overall in what does our body really need just from a longevity, a health perspective.
Okay. So are you saying that because we try so hard to tell people at diagnosis, this isn't going to change your life, you can do whatever you want, you just count the carbs and put in the insulin right now? Of course, knowing that's not that simple, and that advice never really helps anybody. But the intent of it is there's an amount of insulin that covers your food.
Yes.
But you're saying it takes out the piece. We stop considering the impact of the food outside of the blood sugar.
Right.
Right. Because I know how to bolus for marshmallow peeps. So I can eat them because I can eat
them.
I can eat whatever I can bolus for. Right. And so some people might be hearing that and going, I definitely thought Scott would disagree with that because he says, I don't care what you eat, just know how to bolus for it. So this is interesting because it breaks apart like the sort of tier structure that people who are passing information on to other people have to consider, because you have to think about everyone you're talking to. Like whatever you say has to work for everybody. It's hard, or in general, like, you know what I mean?
It is a general. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
When you're in the public eye, you can't just start saying something that would really work for a low carb person, but not work for somebody else, because then they'll be out there trying it. So I just think I don't imagine that people listening would know the kind of like back of the brain pressure I have. I can speak for myself about what I say out loud, you know? And so we make this one comment, you can cover it, you can eat it. I almost said stupid saying, but I'm sure some of you like it, so I don't want to say stupid saying, but sorry. What's the saying about I can eat anything except poison and cupcakes with poison on it? Have you ever saw that diabetes meme? You've never seen that one? I don't think
I've ever seen that.
Yeah,
no.
It's in response to, can you eat that?
Okay.
Oh, you have diabetes. Can you eat that? I can eat anything but poison or cupcakes with poison on them. Like that's the response, right? And yes, you absolutely can. But it covers the initial problem because you don't want people to run into eating disorders. You don't want them to. No. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's there's a really hard line to honestly walk. And I think there's a broader issue there. But when you do have diabetes, because blood sugar and the stuff that we use to manage blood sugar can have effect on overall health. I mean, everybody knows about the complications. That's one big thing that everybody's told about, right? But not only does blood sugar impact your overall health, we have nutrients that are a basic necessity of life that we're supposed to be putting in to fuel our body, to fuel the energy that gets produced in all of our cells. I mean, I heard something the other day, which it struck with me. It was a podcast. Someone who was talking about like the most complex computers, right? And was comparing them to our cells. Our cells are unbelievably complex, like self-driving computers. Okay. And the way that they work to keep our body like energized, to keep blood flowing, to keep organs working without conscious effort.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Right.
But what we also put into our body, do to our body, the activity that we do with our body, it all plays into that health. So if we're only focusing on managing blood sugar and covering whatever food we desire eating with insulin, sure, you may have lovely looking blood sugar numbers, but if you're only eating, as your example, Peeps all day,
then there's no nutrition and all. And so I think it's this kind of like cascading tier. Like you have to take the humanity out of it for a minute and just think of yourself as a person sitting across from a doctor. Their number one goal is for your blood sugar to be stable and low. Whether they can accomplish that or not, that's the thing they're thinking of. They want that, and then they don't want you to have diabetes complications. These are the things they're thinking about. So they're saying, learn how to use the insulin. There's no doctor in the world that thinks that, I'm going to talk you into eating healthfully if you haven't been
already,
on the day you were diagnosed with diabetes, right? Like, so that runs into where I come from when I say, look, I don't care what you eat. I want you to know how to use your insulin. I don't mean I don't care what you eat. There are plenty of things I don't think you should eat, but it's not my job to explain it to you. And it's, to me, it's my job to talk to you about how insulin works. So this is like this supercomputer is sitting up there and it's crunching numbers and doing all this stuff. And then I'm like, you know what? I should try to make this harder. I'll throw a shovel full of dirt on the monitor and piss into the keyboard and see if this thing can still do it.
Like, come on.
Wait, it's still going? Hold on a second. You start throwing the mouse across the room. Like, can you do it now? And that's where the body is really astonishing.
Yes.
Yeah. You can pee into your keyboard for years and it'll keep chugging along. And then one day it craps out. And then what do? We always go, I don't understand what happened. Yeah.
Right. I mean, the body is meant to be, again, a self-healing machine. It does the best that it can. It's the reason that wounds heal.
Mhm.
It's the reason that we can get better from, the common cold and all those kinds of things. But if the basis of what it's working off in order to run smoothly, not with pee on it, like computer.
Sorry. Just popped into my head. But yeah, good.
Right. So what we put in makes a big difference in the running of that.
Yeah.
And we talk about ages, age levels of diabetes are very, very, very young to very old.
Mhm.
And so what you start out with in terms of putting in for somebody who's diagnosed young can make a really big difference in their long-term health.
Yeah.
Right.
If you think about your cells in your body or you as a whole person, like imagine if you were just walking in a straight line forever and every day I hung another 1 pound weight off your back and you'd be like, oh, I can do this. I can do this. And then there'd be a day where I just hang one more and you could not move forward anymore.
Sure.
I think that's a way to think about poor eating choices. Like really, like, I can get away with it today. But then we run into that psychological thing, which I talk about pretty frequently through the podcast, I think. But people are so hopeful, which is lovely and necessary. I think hope is what keeps you from losing your mind, right?
Yes.
Yeah. But that hope, misguided, makes you feel like I could smoke a cigarette today and be okay. Like, that's not going to hurt me.
Right.
I only did coke at a party on Saturday nights in college. Like no kidding. Like I'll be all right. Like that, it's going to be okay. It's just a soda. It's just this. It's only a grilled cheese sandwich with bacon.
Right.
I skipped the French fries. Like you know what I mean? Like yeah. And so
I got the Coke instead.
Yeah. Have you ever had a stick of butter out and used it for cooking and then looked back and thought, there's a half a stick of butter gone. That's in me now. Even deep frying things. You know what I mean? Like you deep fry. I make potato chips here sometimes. You start with a gallon of oil and dump some into the pan. And when you're done, you eat the potato chips, but there's a quarter a gallon of oil gone. You don't think about where that's at,
Right.
Anyway, if you could magic wand everybody listening. So I'm assuming if you could really magic wand them, you'd make them not remember it. And then they would eat kale salads and all things that were really good for them. And they would just be happy with it. They'd feel like they were having Twinkies while they were eating whatever god awful things you eat. And then
Thanks. I was going to say, gosh, you imagine that I eat kale salads all day long.
I think you wash your quinoa down with fresh something. I don't know exactly what.
I do like kale. I do. And actually, my boys really like that. Honestly, in place of potato chips, I make kale chips. They're very tasty and they're good for you. So why not?
It is a lot about training your taste buds, though, too.
True.
Yeah. Yeah. So you started your boys early enough that they don't know from anything else.
Now that they're older, they're aware. They've been to parties. They've been to kids' houses and, that kind of stuff. They can definitely identify the differences in what we have and what we allow in our house versus what is available. And what I like to see the majority of the time, if we do eat out, we have a favorite restaurant here it's like a salad kind of place where you can put your own salad type of dishes together with the proteins and the vegetables and the toppings and that kind of stuff. And I like to let them choose. Because I really like to see what are they going to put together.
Yeah.
Now, of the choices on the bar, there's nothing really that's quote unquote bad. Right. But I love to see that they choose a little bit different each time. Sometimes they want to choose something that they've not tried before. Like the last time we were there, my little guy chose artichokes because he was like, Mom, what are those? I'm like, those are artichokes. He's like, they look kind of interesting. Put those on there too. I'm like, great.
You're at home peeling an artichoke, trying to figure out what to do with it. I would not know what to do with it.
It starts early. I mean, and if I was on a grand scale, if I could wave the magic wand, not just in the realm of diabetes, but it would be for a much bigger scale change to education.
Yeah.
I've always said if I were going to go back to do something within my degree, but do something different, I would absolutely go back to do something about childhood education about health and nutrition.
Okay.
Because I think it's sad that it doesn't start at the right place. And that if they're not getting something at home, they're clearly not going to get it in school because that's not a focus at school.
I believe that for many people, thinking about food begins when they are in their mid to late 20s and their stomach starts to hurt, or they have a kid and they think, oh, I don't want this kid to eat the way I eat. Like, seriously, because we don't do a good job of, of teaching other people. And we've talked about this before, but there are plenty of things that people actually genuinely believe are good for them that are garbage, and they don't know it.
Absolutely.
They have no idea. Like, so, and I've been guilty of that before. I've eaten things and thought, like, this is good for me. And I remember I told the story one time if I was eating the veggie sticks.
Yes.
My wife's like, what are you doing? I'm like, there's vegetables in them. She goes, A, no, there's not. She's like, and B, they're potato chips, you idiot. And I was like, oh, I wonder why they were so good. As far as talking about changing your palate, like my palate has changed slowly over the years. I've cut things out. We've talked about, I cut out oils at one point. I'm very steadfast about that. But even in this last year on the GLP medication, there's just some things now because you feel like it just feels different. Like I was at a party once, there was a chip bowl out and I grabbed 2 potato chips and I was eating them. And first of all, they were crappy potato chips. Like, I know you're having a party and you're trying to save a couple bucks, but you invited me to your house. Like, could you, like, you know what I mean? But neither here nor there. I found a trash can and I spit them in a napkin. I was like, I don't want to eat these.
Right.
And that's a different world for me to some degree. Okay. So you would help people understand nutrition better.
I would.
Okay. But let's say, I'll go back to your initial thing. You're not judging anyone. Like,
I am. No.
Yeah. It doesn't matter. I'm going to go back to the beginning of it. I don't care how you eat. Your body's not going to have time to reject life because of your poor nutrition if your blood sugars are all over the place. And that's when we're talking about diabetes, that's the first step. Correct. If you need to eat a Twinkie and you can't stop yourself, let's at least learn how to bolus for it. We'll talk about not eating the Twinkie later.
100% agreed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, what's the question for me? I used to hate ordering my daughter's diabetes supplies. I never had a good experience and it was frustrating. But it hasn't been that way for a while. Actually, for about 3 years now, because that's how long we've been using US Med. usmed.com/juicebox or call 888-721-1514. US Med is the #1 distributor for Freestyle Libre systems nationwide. They are the #1 specialty distributor for Omnipod DASH, the #1 fastest growing tandem distributor nationwide, the #1 rated distributor in Dexcom customer satisfaction surveys. They have served over 1 million people with diabetes since 1996, and they always provide 90 days worth of supplies and fast and free shipping. US Med carries everything from insulin pumps and diabetes testing supplies to the latest CGMs like the Libre 3 and Dexcom G7. They accept Medicare nationwide and over 800 private insurers. Find out why US Med has an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau at usmed.com/juicebox or just call them at 888-721-1514. Get started right now, and you'll be getting your supplies the same way we do. It's important to me that the supplements I take are of the highest quality, and that's why for a number of years now, I've been drinking AG1. Unlike many supplement brands, AG1 is researched and developed by an in-house team of scientists, doctors, and nutritionists with decades of experience in their respective fields. For AG1, quality isn't just a buzzword, it's a commitment backed by expert-led scientific research, high-quality ingredients, industrial-leading manufacturing, and rigorous testing. At each step of the process, AG1 goes above and beyond industry standards. And that's why I know I can trust what's in every scoop of AG1. AG1 supports the Juicebox Podcast with their ads, and they also support my immune health. So if you want to replace your multivitamin and more, start with AG1. Try AG1 and get your free 1-year supply of vitamin D3, K2, and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first subscription at drinkag1.com/juicebox. That's drinkag1.com/juicebox. Links to AG1, US Med, Eversense, and all the sponsors can be found at juiceboxpodcast.com or in the show notes of your podcast app. Using my links helps support the podcast production and keeps it free and plentiful. I'm excited. Do you text people naked in the shower? No, I don't. I already answered that one. What's the next one?
I do not do that either. I turn my phone off.
Do you really?
I don't take it in I just keep it outside because, using Loop, obviously I have to be close enough in terms of like keeping things running, but I have a watch. I can see where my blood sugar is. I don't need it there. I don't need visual or noise. My husband is the one he listens to podcasts. He's always got music going in the shower. I'm like, I like the noise of the
You want it to be quiet.
People are going to be like, this is weird, but that's like the noise of the shower.
Jennifer, you said you ate kale. You're not going to get weirder for most people than that. So I watch YouTube videos in the shower. I listen to podcasts this morning.
Oh yeah, no.
Oh my God. You ready? Hold on. I was a little worried that I left something in an episode that I wasn't supposed to leave in. And so I listened to myself in the shower this morning, which is, I don't know if you know the word douchey, but it really is.
Yeah. There you go. Well, you were trying to work at the same time.
I was trying to work, yeah.
Yeah. I will say that if I could do something in the shower, which there's no way to do this. Like I love reading.
You would read in the shower?
I would entirely read in the shower. In fact, I would be the person who would finally realize that the shower is probably too cold.
Oh, you'd get lost in reading, you think?
Get lost in reading. That's like...
If you try reading in a hot tub, would you like that?
If I had a hot tub, that would be lovely.
All right, let's get Jenny a hot tub. Although you're in Wisconsin, God knows. By the way, did it snow like Snowmageddon there this week?
It did actually. The funny thing, so it snowed on, was it Tuesday? And then Wednesday.
Yeah.
And then it stopped. It was raining, like downpour Tuesday morning until about noon. And then I looked outside and it was snowing. And I was like, well, that's
my brother's job got closed down. It snowed so much. And in Wisconsin, that's saying something. So
it is, especially, yeah. We can have snow until the end of April here, quite honestly. But this was definite snow and it was heavy and thick and really wet. But today, like a good, probably at least 75% of it's gone. It's sunny. It's like almost 50 degrees outside and it's beautiful.
Do you know what we had here this morning?
Rain? I don't know.
An earthquake. Seriously. 4.8 on
you
the Richter
feel
scale.
it?
Oh, feel it. I was in here going, okay. Like everything was shaking. It went on for at least a minute. So it started. We'll get to your question for me in a second.
Oh, yeah.
Unless your first question is like, have you ever been in an earthquake? Because if so, then we're covering everything here. At first, I'm like, is the washing machine unbalanced? And then I thought, I don't have anything in the washing machine. And then I was like, oh, this is an earthquake. Because I've lived through one other one in New Jersey like 10 years ago. Like everything, exactly what you think of, like, and everything's rattling around. And then at the end, as it dies off, your feet are still vibrating on the floor for like the last 30 seconds. You can feel it under your feet. It's really interesting.
I've never been in an earthquake.
Well, I've been in two, but they're East Coast earthquakes, so I don't know if they count or not. All right, I'm sorry.
Oh.
What's your question for me?
Okay, I'm trying to decide between, I've got two here that I think would be good ones.
All right.
Let's see. So, okay. You've talked to a lot of heads of diabetes tech kind of companies.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard them. You've told me about them, right? We've all heard you talk to them. And what do you get as the main reason that the companies don't tend to hit the whole market of desire for everyone with diabetes, right? We see products that aim for safety, but when we look at what the systems that aren't approved provide, safety is already in there, right? Do it yourself covers this and it allows for more flexibility and more self-adjustment, et cetera. So why are we still focusing on safe numbers who somebody deems safe when many people, I know it's a small percentage of what the big market is really.
Yeah.
Why can't they just make products that cover everybody and your desire to sort of streamline it the way that you want? There you go.
I have to ask you first. Did you ask this because you saw people talking about what pump to buy in the Facebook group? That's not why you thought of that. Oh, because I've been thinking about
not at all.
It's so interesting you asked because I've been thinking about this to some degree for the last 2 days. There's been two big, like really like lots of, 130 comment, like, posts.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a great group. You really should join it if you're not. Where people are like, hey, I'm about to get a pump. Give me the pros and cons of all of them. And as I'm reading through them, I had the same thought you did. Each one of these devices, it's like it chose a third of a pie.
Right.
How do I mean that? I mean, like, it feels like, I'm just going to come out and say it. It feels like Omnipod, Tandem, Medtronic, and I guess iLet. It's almost like they looked at a pie. The pie was split into quarters, and each quarter was a goal.
Right.
And each one of them picked a goal and then ignored the other 3 goals is kind of how it feels. Does that make sense? Yeah.
That's absolutely what I'm getting at. And in the broader scope, the my pie piece and all the people that I would definitely put in the same, you, Arden's goals and everything, kind of in the same pie piece of desire and target and independence and wanting to work with your system and have it work to your goals. I don't understand why, with the safety that we know how to achieve, we can't get systems that allow people to do all of that in parameters that are personalized, right? Yeah. Right now, the lowest target blood sugar that's on the market in a system is Medtronic.
And what's their target?
Their target is, you can go as low as 100.
Is that the 780G?
That's the 780G.
Okay.
Or 5.5 if you're millimoles.
And what is Omnipod 5? 110?
110, which is similar to Control IQ Tandem.
Which is 112 and a half or 113 and a half.
Right.
Something crazy like that. I love that.
Although if you're setting up the pump, it actually is 110.
Okay.
You don't set it up as 112.5, which is just, it's part of like somebody explained it to me the other day, and I can't remember exactly what she told me, but yeah, it's not what gets set in the pump as the target.
Right.
But it is essentially 112.
And the iLet is shooting for an A1C in the 7th.
It's shooting for that. And you do have the ability to navigate low, moderate, and high target as one pivotal kind of point. The only other point that you can put into iLet is your weight. That's it. Those are your pivot points.
Oh, Jenny, are you saying I could lie about my weight and make it more aggressive? I feel like that's what I just heard you say. You didn't say that. You would never say that. Nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered. I actually don't know that works or not. That's just popped in I want to be very clear. I'm not joking around. I have no idea if that would work. But as I'm sitting here, that makes a little sense.
But you are thinking about it in the right way, because it's basing it off of your starting weight that you enter.
That's interesting. Yes. So I wonder, if you had insulin resistance like PCOS, if you could make it. All right, that's for another podcast. So I drew my pie right in front of me, and I wrote more aggressive, and I gave that to Tandem. No tubes, I gave that to Omnipod. Low effort, I gave that to iLet. And I don't know what to call Medtronic's version because I haven't seen it enough.
I would say I don't know what to call it either, because I would say it's
Is it pretty equivalent to the Control IQ, or would you choose Tandem's algorithm over it?
For the correctability feature, I would actually choose Medtronic, interestingly.
Okay.
Medtronic's correctives are more frequent. It's corrective boluses. It also does do temp basal increases, similar to Control IQ. But based on blood sugar, it also is willing to give corrective pulses, like the standard Control IQ algorithm setting.
Yeah.
But it does it more frequently, which means that you can get around highs much better for some people, much better with Medtronic 780 than you can, because Tandem's just slower in its decision to give you a pulse out.
You're going to see an ad on social media that says, Jenny Smith says, I would use Medtronic before Tandem. And then quote this.
Well, that's it. For some reasons, yes. Yeah. For some reasons, I would actually choose Tandem. Tandem's the only one that's approved that you can actually, if you know your basals are well set, if you're that type of person who has really awesome, settings, and you want the system to just work off of them, Control IQ is a beautiful algorithm, because it takes your settings and adjusts up or down off of them.
Yeah. So your question back to me sounds more, here's how
Mine was why? What do you think is the reason?
Well, I'm going to give you my why in a second, and I could be guessing, but what I really feel like you're asking me is, how come Omnipod 5's algorithm isn't more aggressive like Control IQ's? Because that fixes a lot of your concerns, right? Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
Yes. One really big negative to me in terms of Omnipod 5, which I think has a host of really wonderful pros. But one of the big cons is that Omnipod 5 only suspends. It doesn't take away slowly as it sees something happening that's a drift down under a target that it desires.
Okay.
Instead, it stops.
Mhm.
And that creates a lot of issues for people.
With rebounds.
Especially with rebound,
Yeah.
especially when you're coming into a meal.
Yeah. Because it could tail away coming into a meal because it doesn't know you're going to eat 2 hours from now if it's trying to stop a low. But if it's trying to drift, I get your point. So listen, I'm no business executive. That's for sure. If you guys could sit in on any of the business meetings I have with the advertisers, you would do the same thing that I'm sure they do when the meetings end and the cameras go off. I'm sure you would say to yourself, I can't believe he is doing business with those people. I talk just like this in business meetings. People stare back at me like, what's happening? So here's the funny thing that we're not talking about is that pie, except for low effort, 3/4 of that pie belongs to any of the do-it-yourself algorithms that exist on the internet.
That's my point.
Yeah.
I don't understand with everything that we have in the do-it-yourself world, all of the research and the proof in the pudding that they've put together. I don't get why at the top level, these big companies are not just saying, you know what, this is lovely.
Yeah.
It's all why don't we just deal with them and put this into a...
So I will tell you something that I said, because the person I think I said it to doesn't exist at the company anymore. But this is going to have to go back, 4 or 5 years ago, right? So I think everyone knows that Omnipod was a little behind the pace getting to an algorithm, right?
Yes.
And I think the reason for that is probably at upper management. They were a little unclear about the direction they were going until they brought these people in and got very solidified and decided on the path that they're on now. That's my perspective, having worked with them, a little bit over the years. So they got the management in there that was like, hey, listen, let's make insulin pumps and let's go. And then they were behind by them because Tandem was already moving. Medtronic had already been through their first generation. We also don't give Medtronic enough credit for going first in the retail algorithm market because you knew they're going to take it in the ass because it wasn't going to be perfect and it was the first time. And people certainly gave them a lot of crap over it.
But the data that they got in order to move forward and build gave data to other companies to actually say, what can we improve on this, right?
The trailblazer doesn't usually get the credit. And I definitely think in retail algorithms, Medtronic took one hard for that. But I was sitting with somebody one day on a call. And that, like I said, these people don't exist at Omnipod anymore. So I'm not worried about saying this. And they were like, hey, we're building an algorithm. Like they were talking about how they were going to go about it and everything. And I said, whatever you're doing, stop. I'm like, stop. Put 2 people who speak Russian on an airplane. Find a guy named Ivan, give him a bag full of money, get him a visa, bring him to Boston and let him build your algorithm for you. Please, please go get the guy that wrote this code that this loop thing my daughter is using. Just go get this right now. And boy, I said it every time I could to anybody who would listen to me. Now, listen, were they going to do that? No. Is that even reasonable? No. But it also, you can't tell me that all of these companies haven't picked through that code. You know what I mean? Just
correct.
Yeah. Make it like that.
And, the other thing, I know all these companies have people who have diabetes on their teams.
Right.
I know that they do. Are the people with diabetes not the ones who are they not able to give feedback? Are they not able to say, hey, do you see this big group of people out here?
Yeah.
It's doing a lovely, shouldn't we be thinking along these lines? No, I mean, if they ask me, crap, they don't even have to pay me. I'm just going to tell them, I'll give you my opinion.
Yeah. No, I was freely offering my opinion. I was like, just do this. And because Loop is an example, you can choose a version of Loop that makes basal adjustments to try to stop highs, or you can flip the switch the other way and decide to let it make larger boluses. I've always said to people, set up algorithms the way Adobe Photoshop is set up. There's beginner, intermediate, and advanced. And when you click on one of those tabs, you get more features. Just make your algorithm like that. Start everybody at beginner. Tell them you got to be in it for 6 months. And then, if you have a certain percentage under whatever lows, I don't care how you do it, to legally cover yourself, let them move up to intermediate. Make them take a test, let them move up to intermediate. give the thing. It would be so, I mean, I really believe it would be very simple to do. And so the question is, why don't they? I think that comes down to time, limitations of humans, and money. So,
but what limitation? I'm just going to be completely opposite.
What are the limitations, in my opinion?
What are the limitations, quite honestly? Come on, limitations.
It's success.
People built this.
Yeah, but your job is different, right? Your job is like, every day you sit down and you look at a person, and if you do a good job helping them do better with their health, you won and your employer's happy, right? And the people who are paying you are happy. Jenny's like, I don't know if my employer's ever happy, but you understand, like, yeah, we all have jobs. Yeah. Okay. But these people are saying, we're going to make an algorithm, for example. It's going to take so many years, and then it's going to have to go off to the FDA, and it's going to take so many years, and then we're actually going to have to make it, and it's going to take so many years. We're looking at 5 years before we start getting our money back. They got to spend money for 5 years. They got to run that whole organization with no return on their, and what if it fails? Like, so let's do something we know for sure is going to work, and we'll lean into who we are. And Omnipod is tubeless. My daughter's only ever wanted an Omnipod.
Right.
Loop works on Omnipod. So
that's what I'm saying. In this day and age, I'm not saying years ago. I'm saying in this day and age, we already have the information. Nobody needs to sit in the little back room, not getting paid for anything
and make it up.
They're not making anything up. It's already out there. It's free. It's freely out there.
Jenny, I've heard that this Ivan guy, because of the war in Ukraine, can't even like be involved in making Loop anymore. Like, I mean, I think we could have got him out of there for $25,000 and like a can of Coke. You know what I mean? Like, here, so I don't know. Maybe he probably lives in a metropolitan area. He's probably listening right now. I'm like, asshole, I live in a very metropolitan area. But seriously, like, there's been other people since him.
Oh, yes.
Like, there
are many people in the whole.
Basically, people with type 1 diabetes who know how to code, who sit down and say, I want to figure out how to do this. And in their like, Arden's not even using Loop anymore. She's using IAPS. Fantastic. Like, just fantastic. And like, I don't know. Like, and then you saw Tide Pool. They tried to do it. And I mean, God bless them, but that ain't going nowhere. You know what I mean? Like
not at this point.
I mean holy Hannah, I'm going to be dead by the time it, like, you know, like they told us.
Gets in a drivable pump.
Yeah. And listen, and maybe that's even the pump companies saying, maybe we don't want to be involved in that. I don't know. I don't know the business of that, but that business plan, it's taken too goddamn long is what it is. By the time they get that mainstream enough, that algorithm is going to be, I'm not going to want it anymore, you know? So,
yeah.
But yeah, no, your point's not lost on me, Jenny. I mean, somewhere between money, time, limits of people, and what I meant by limitations of people is that everybody in their job, they got to succeed every year to get a bonus, to keep their job, to move up. And they can't sit around for 5 years going, it's coming, because they're looking out for themselves too.
Understood.
So, yeah, I don't know. I've interviewed a lot of people, and I generally think they're telling the truth when I'm talking to them. Like, I really do. But I also think they're only talking about the things that they're willing to talk about.
Or the things that they know about from a department angle, right? Not everybody is able to share all the aspects of all the things that are going on with a particular product. You have your job. Somebody else has another piece of that job. And you may not be allowed to talk about certain features or things at this point.
By the way, that code is open source. Like,
100%.
Like I'm going to tell you right now, if you made me the king of any one of these companies, I'd go in, I'd sit down and go, hey, everyone stop what you're doing. Go get that algorithm, get it into our goddamn pump, because we're going to take this market over. We are going to, like, it would, in 6 months online, people would know yours was the one. And you know, they all know it. They know, because they all talk about, like, well, we're this, but they're that. Like, you know, they do it in their marketing back and forth. But the truth is that it's none of them are talking about the real truth, which is that Loop is just way better than all of them. Yeah, that's all. You know, but people ask me, what's the best algorithm? I tell them it's the one my daughter's using right now. And if she's using a different one 6 months from now, I guarantee you that'll be the best one, because I ain't sitting around, you know?
I have it built on my phone. I haven't played around
IAPS? Just put it on. Oh, you'll get it.
I haven't played around with because there's lots of things in it.
But it's also scary. Like I'm counting on like a guy named Ivan not to be impacted by a war in Ukraine. Like, you know what I mean? Like, is it the Ukraine? No, it's Ukraine, right? And like, so like, that's crazy. I know that's crazy. like I know that's insane, but I don't know how to tell you that. Like the other night I watched Arden come back from class, and by watched, I mean, I could see on her night scout. She got back from class, and I think she just was really hungry, and she walked in her dorm room and she ate. I think she pushed the button and she ate, right? And her blood sugar climbed to like 185. And I watched that algorithm just bolus and bolus and bolus and crush it and bring it back down. And she didn't get low when it was over. And that was it. And or we put her on a GLP medication. Jenny knows this. Arden's, I won't go through the whole thing, but Arden's insulin sensitivity went from 1 unit moves her 43 points to 1 unit moves her 90 points because of this GLP she's on. I don't have to wait for it to relearn. I ain't got to call my doctor. I just went into a menu and I was like, insulin sensitivity. And I told her, I'm like, just keep moving it until it works. And that's it. That's all we did. That's how technical I said, hey, try 1 to 53. And then a day later, I said, make it 65. And we moved up the GLP medication a little bit. I was like, make it 80. Like, you know what I mean? So what's
funny about this is that was actually a question on my thing you was, yes. I was going to ask, how many days do you watch for a trend?
How many days do I watch for a trend? I do it till it works. Like, I don't know how to so there's a weird one going back to what we talked about in the beginning. How would I talk about that in front of other people? So, you know what you and I usually do when we talk is I let you give the very technical answer, and then I just tell people what I do, and then they can figure out where in between that works for them.
Sure.
Yeah. So Arden injected a GLP medication. She started with 0.25 units of Ozempic, and at that point, her insulin sensitivity is 1 to 43. 2 days later, we were seeing low blood sugars already, which is uncommon. Like, you know, it's not even a therapeutic dose of that medication, but here it was, right? She felt a little full. She wasn't eating as much. I thought, it might just be food. I watched it. She had a low. The algorithm couldn't pull her out of the low. And so I changed her insulin sensitivity, right? Then the next day I changed her basal. And I think I had the whole thing set up 3 days after 3.5, 4 days after she injected the Ozempic the first time. I watched that work. I made little tiny adjustments, like turned insulin sensitivity like 2 more points or made the basal like 0.5 less. Then I watched her meals. I made her insulin to carb ratio weaker until I didn't see lows before she started eating. And then I left it there and watched it. So, I mean, I had the whole thing adjusted out in like 5 or 6 days.
Right.
But how long would I wait? I knew what was happening. There was a variable at play here. I had set settings up for Arden and her physiology, and then we changed fundamentally how her physiology worked with this variable, and I changed it immediately.
Right. And you had a variable that you were paying attention to.
Yeah, it's not like out of nowhere she started exercising and I didn't know or something like that. But that's where we start talking about real world stuff, where if I just noticed on Thursday, she was low, and I was like, I don't know what happened. I'd wait. I wouldn't do anything. If it didn't happen on Friday, I'd go, If I came back around on next Thursday and it happened again, then I'd start being like, hey, what do you do at school on Thursdays?
Right.
Yeah, that'd be my first question. What do you do at school on Thursdays? And have you been doing something different, running around more, blah, blah, blah? Are you eating lunch? Like, is that the day, something and then if I couldn't see a variable, well, there'd have to be one. If you were only low on Thursdays, there'd have to be one. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And that's where looking historically at information, which I know that you do, you know, at her information, but I think that's where it becomes really important in trending to look at some data from the past to spot some of that. Because if you are really trying to make a baseline change because you sense that something needs to change, then a couple of days of a trend around a particular time of day can sometimes give you a foot in the door about okay, I can change it this way. Kind of like you said, I change it. The next day it's not enough, but there was a trend to start with. So I know that incrementally now over the next couple of days, I can make little daily changes, but you have to first start with a trend, right?
I also set up some profiles for Arden when we were with her 2 weeks ago. She was starting to get low overnight, and it was always happening at like 3:30 in the morning, which means that she's eating around 10, and that last bolus is messing her up somehow. And I didn't want to change all of her settings because it was only happening at some points in her menstrual cycle, not the whole thing. So I built a 90% profile and an 80% profile. So she can go like in the bottom of the IAPS app, it just says normal, I think. You can touch that and then choose the other ones that you program. So I said, listen, I said, see where you touch this? And then this comes up. She goes, yeah. I'm like, if I text you 90, touch that, touch 90. And she goes, okay. So I started like a week and a half ago. I texted her at night. I was like, I just sent her 90 and that was it. And then in the morning, I sent her normal. And so I was kind of practicing overnight and it stopped the lows. And then I waited to see if she'd remember to do it and she didn't. So then I was like, hey, I think we want to do 90 overnight as long as you're on this injection. And then we'll see what happens after that. But yeah, I mean, how long would I wait? I mean, there's no way. You know what they always say? They always say, wait 3 days. And then people's response is, if I wait 3 days, it'll change again by the time it happens. Or it'll go away. Or I think that's what happens. I think people think it's going to go away.
And I think that's where that's why I asked, like, how many days? I mean, in many doctors' offices usually actually say, let's wait a week, right? That is too long, right? It doesn't mean, though, that you just let things happen while you're watching for a trend to appear over a couple of days, right? So at bedtime, you're always having a rise in your blood sugar. Okay, correct the rise. But if it's only tonight and it doesn't happen for the next 6 nights, that's not a trend. So you don't have a profile change to make. You need to accommodate around whatever variable created that high to begin with versus, okay, I'm high, I corrected it. Tomorrow night, I go high again, I correct it. By then, it's more like I didn't change anything.
Rule. Yeah, something's happening. Right. I am always very careful of not making Band-Aids all over the place because you can make so many different little blind adjustments and everything gets so messed up. The only thing you can do is start over because you can't even tell what that. And that's what doctors are notorious for. It's like, well, you're getting low at 2 a.m. Well, we'll turn your basal down at 2 a.m. You know, A, sooner than that. And B, like, I guess the way I would want everybody to think about it is the way I talk about it all the time, which is insulin for now, insulin taken now is for later. But more importantly, what's happening now is because of something you did previously.
Right.
Yeah. So it's the same idea, but it's a different way of thinking about it. Like when something's happening at 1 o'clock, please go backwards hours and look to see what got you there. All right. Do you have time to ask me the other one, or are we done? Are you out of time?
No, I've got about 10 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Let's see. I actually came up with a whole bunch. Which ones do I want to ask, though? Well, this one. How do you feel about AI in diabetes specifically? And do you ever think that it will completely 100% hit the mark of people with diabetes not really having to think about more than like putting their pump on?
Okay.
I have my own thoughts about that, but I was curious what you think.
Oh, I want to hear what you think too. So you have two different questions?
Kind of. I mean, it's all within the same framework, though, of AI, right?
Give me the first part.
How do you feel about AI specifically in diabetes?
I have a company right now indexing the entire podcast for me.
Okay.
So my goal is that you'll be able to go to a website and ask the website a question, and it will only answer based on everything that all of us have ever said to each other on the podcast, all 1,200 episodes, and it will continue to index into the future.
So the next question leads into that concept. Yeah. So that idea, I think that's actually easy for AI to do.
Yes.
At a deeper human level, though, I think more in terms of like educational, right? Not even necessarily the techie part, but like educationally. When you have someone that you're working with who has like one concept to manage. What happens when now AI is doing the instructional and they have multiple medical things, some of which could actually have completely opposite parameters of management?
Yeah. So other things could be impacting that there's no way the AI would even know about.
Right. And that takes a human. Do you think that AI, I guess, will ever get to the point of thinking more human-like? Because it takes analysis on a different level than computer has.
Not without input, though, because like you have to teach the AI the podcast so that it can answer questions that have been answered in the podcast already.
Okay.
If you want an app to tell you, hey, you got low here, like we see you're low, I think you should have eaten 15 grams of carbs at this time, or for it to say, hey, we see a low coming, go ahead and eat this. I think that's going to exist pretty quickly.
Sure.
But if you like, I actually think that I don't just think it's so funny. Are you reading my emails, Jennifer? What's going on? I've been approached recently by a company. I'm still assessing it, and they want to be partners. Like they want to get involved a little bit. And they have an app that is going to look at your pump and CGM data and say things to you like, hey, you should probably have 10 grams of carbs right now to avoid a low. And they've asked me if I wanted to learn more about it.
I wonder if you'll have to tell me later if you can.
I'll tell you what it is. Mouth it to me. No, not that one.
No? Okay.
Okay.
That's the one that I know about.
That had to be so frustrating for people listening.
Like, what are they saying?
What did she just say? I'm still assessing how I'm going to answer this inquiry.
Sure.
I think it can get to it, but the problem is it's the same problem as why don't the pumps all do what they should be all doing? Because you need somebody to put that effort into it. And that's where it never happens. Like, because yes, listen, there was a guy on here one time talking about, if you had location services on your phone and you went and got pizza at Pizza Hut and you said, hey, I had 3 slices of pizza and this was the bolus and here's what happened to my blood sugar afterwards and I needed more insulin, blah, blah, blah. Then the next time you went back to that Pizza Hut, the location services would say, I'm at that Pizza Hut where last time this happened. So this is how much insulin you should use for a slice of pizza. That's very doable, but somebody would have to do it. Do you know what I mean?
Somebody has to collect all the data to essentially teach it how to navigate that.
You first have to teach it for yourself, but I'm saying someone actually has to go to the trouble of putting it together. And what I usually find is that the end users don't want complicated when it comes to diabetes. So if there's a big setup where I have to always wear a watch that tells me where I'm going, or I have to remember to tell it, hey, this is Pizza Hut and that's my local pizza place, they're different, like that kind of stuff. No one's going to do that stuff.
I would do.
Yeah. I'll say something.
Hire me.
Jenny's like, I would do it. I'll tell you something that I've very privately told any person who's ever come at me with a diabetes app and been like, can you tell me what you think of this app? I'll tell them all the time the same thing. I don't think this is what people want.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think people want more involvement.
Yeah.
I think even if your app does what you say it does, you're not going to be able to get it widely adopted. That's going to be the problem.
I think that you looked at all of my questions somehow, because that's actually one of my last questions was, with all the tech and the info and the apps and everything that we have collecting, I guess, do you think it's created more mental health stuff in the diabetes realm because...
Won't change a goddamn thing. It's like everything else. There's 10% of people who are going to really pay attention to it. They're going to love it. They're going to use it. A small percentage of them are going to go cuckoo nuts over it. And everyone else is going to just go like, I just shoot my Lannis. It all works out. Like, right. You know what I mean? Like people, again, are always the last speed bump, right? So you're asking, will AI get to the point like it is in a movie for diabetes? And I would say not in my foreseeable future, but here's the caveat. I do have a lot of hope about this. The way things are figured out now for medicine, people become researchers. Like not every doctor sees somebody with a stethoscope, right?
Right.
Some people work in labs their whole life. Some people work very hard and do good work for an entire lifetime, and they're actually going in the wrong direction and they don't even know it. They're just going through the scientific process. They're doing what they're supposed to be doing. They get to the end of their career and they go, I zigged when I should have zagged. How about that? And it's still not a waste of time. It's how it works. I don't see how it's not possible that in the next 10 years, we don't have AI running tests and doing decades worth of work in a couple of days.
In short time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And saying, oh, we tried that path. It didn't work. Throw that away. Do that. Or here's what we learned here. And to keep compiling it together. That I actually think is going to happen.
As a time saver in research and information and bringing together faster. Mm-hmm.
In my lifetime, we're going to see things happen with medicine that we didn't imagine because AI is going to be able to run the lab work for us. Like that's my expectation. And that I actually kind of believe in. So none of us are going to have jobs if that works. We're all going to be button pushers, or algorithm askers or something like that. You'll be the vice president of, hey, Siri, tell me. Oh, I shouldn't have said that out loud. And so, but you know what I mean? Like eventually you'll just be able to run tests over and over and over again and validate them and validate them and validate them and come up with lifetimes worth of work in very short order and then make some decisions. That I'm hopeful about, actually. And I don't think that's crazy to say, if I'm being honest. But these apps, the way they are right now, they're going to tell you, hey, eat something to avoid a low, or if you go for a walk right now for this many minutes, we think your blood sugar will fall this much. I mean, that's.
But again, they still require input from the user. And that's where it's the more factor in a lot of these that could give you some decision tools. Right. But you have to take the effort to tell it what you're going to do or what you've done in order for it to make enough to gather enough to tell you what to do next time. Yeah. And like you said, it's a great concept, but a lot of people, it's too overwhelming already.
Oh, no, we live in a society now where kids in their 20s don't have sex anymore because it's too much effort. Like if you can't put the effort into getting laid, Jenny, I don't know how you're going to put the effort into bringing down your fat rise on your pasta bolus.
Right.
You know what I mean? Seriously, like we're very insulated at this point, and people have a very high expectation that things are going to happen quickly and just happen without a lot of input. And this is always because of all the variables we talk about all the time. All these variables that impact your blood sugar, the algorithm, whatever, is going to need to know all these things are happening to give you back good data. And more importantly, companies that make money aren't going to put themselves in legal jeopardy by promising that if you saying there's 30 grams of fatness when there's really only 5 is going to give you a 4-unit bolus that you didn't need. And then you're going to turn back to the company and go, hey, your war games machine tried to kill me just now. No one's going to get involved in that.
True.
That's it.
Yeah.
You want to fix people with diabetes right now in a way that is valuable. Help people with diabetes in a way that's valuable right now. I'm not kidding. 2 guys, a briefcase full of money, fly to Russia, find Ivan, drag his ass back here and have him put his algorithm in your pump. And I guarantee you a year from now, I'll be doing ads for your pump and everybody will buy it. And that'll be the end of it. I fixed your whole goddamn, and I want a piece of that money, by the way. Damn it, Jenny.
I gave you the idea, so I want a piece.
God damn, all right, fine. Jenny gets a piece of the money too. God, Jesus, I just lost half my money. Just like that. All right. Thank you. We're going to do more of these because you and I are
Yay.
Yeah, I don't want to say it here on the recording because it'll sound pompous, but I wanted to say we're very good at this and I found this enjoyable. Yeah, we're going to do more of this. I like this. Okay. Thanks.
Awesome. Yay. Okay. Bye.
I'd like to thank AG1 for sponsoring this episode of the Juicebox Podcast and remind you that with your first order, you're going to get a free welcome kit, 5 free travel packs, and a year's supply of vitamin D. That's at ag1.com/juicebox. Arden has been getting her diabetes supplies from US Med for 3 years. You can as well. usmed.com/juicebox or call 888-721-1514. My thanks to US Med for sponsoring this episode and for being longtime sponsors of the Juicebox Podcast. There are links in the show notes and links at juiceboxpodcast.com to US Med and all of the sponsors. A huge thank you to Eversense CGM for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. Are you tired of having to change your sensor every 7 to 14 days? With the Eversense CGM, you just replace it once every 6 months via a simple in-office visit. Learn more and get started today at eversensecgm.com ask.com/juicebox. If you're looking for community around type 1 diabetes, check out the Juicebox Podcast private Facebook group, Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes. But everybody is welcome. Type 1, Type 2, gestational, loved ones, it doesn't matter to me. If you're impacted by diabetes and you're looking for support, comfort, or community, check out Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes on Facebook. You have questions? Scott and Jenny have answers. There are now 19 Ask Scott and Jenny episodes. That's where Jenny Smith and I answer questions from the audience. If you'd like to see a list of them, go to juiceboxpodcast.com, up into the menu, and click on Ask Scott and Jenny. Actually, I think there's way more than 19 at this point, but you get the idea. If you're not already subscribed or following in your favorite audio app, please take the time now to do that. It really helps the show. And get those automatic downloads set up so you never miss an episode. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back very soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast. The episode you just heard was professionally edited by Wrong Way Recording. WrongWayRecording.com.